Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to go over some recent news that came out about the new Star Trek series that is going to be starring Patrick Stewart returning as Jean-Luc Picard, his character from Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the subsequent movies that followed that series. Excuse me, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a dissection of some of the information we have. They're supposed to be coming out with a trailer soon. I don't know how soon. Maybe sometime within the next week. I know there's some people that have seen it, some media people that have shown screenshots and stuff. But let's just jump into this a little bit and just kind of go down the timeline. So first, the series was announced not too long ago. I think it was a couple months ago, and it's going to be going on CBS All Access, similar to Star Trek Discovery. And they announced that Patrick Stewart had been signed back on to play the character. They weren't going to replace him with anybody. They actually got Patrick Stewart to come back and play this character again. And reportedly, it was through very not tumultuous, but extensive negotiations with him. And I'm not aware of any kind of specifics involving that other than the fact that he has been signed on for this particular season, and that it's going to be 10 episodes. They don't give specifically how long these episodes are going to be, but I would assume they'd be somewhere around an hour. That's usually roughly what it is. So here's so let's look at the good and the bad. So the good, we got Patrick Stewart back, and that's always a win when you can get him into a project, especially a project like this. Um, they've clarified that basically the time frame this is going to take place in is going to be 18 years after the 2002 film Star Trek Nemesis, which is basically almost 18 years real time. And it's going to take place after the destruction of Romulus, which is depicted in the Star Trek reboot film from 2009 that was directed by J.J. Abrams, but it's still going to be in the main Star Trek timeline. Um, so we have a time frame, which is interesting because again, this is a time frame we've never really delved into before. They kind of set the reset button in 2009. They really haven't gone too much forward with it. And Discovery is supposed to take place before the original series in terms of a time frame. So here's kind of so that's the good that we know so far, the solid stuff. The bad is very concerning though, because this seems like a last ditch effort by CBS, because Discovery has gotten very bad PR. The fact that it is even going into a third season, I think, is very surprising. Um, but it was getting bad PR. There's been a lot of drama behind the scenes. They had a whole issue with the person who was running the show, or the people that were running the show, to the point where I believe they were removed and replaced. There's been drama issues with the actors behind the scenes. There's been a lot of problems with Star Trek Discovery. Not to mention the fact that the story is not that great. So now you're kind of moving into this Picard series. So this is what they like to do, and they kind of did it with Star Wars in a way, where they play on nostalgia. So like, hey, look who we got back. Look at this guy, he's back. It's kind of the same thing they did with Force Awakens, where you had, oh, we're going to get all the old characters back. We're going to get Harrison Ford back as Han Solo, and Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, and Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. This is the same idea. Oh, we're bringing back Patrick Stewart. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to try and bring back Shatner, but um, that's what this feels like. It feels like this is them grasping at straws to try and keep the Star Trek franchise alive, because they've essentially buried it into the ground. None of the people that were involved in the Abrams films want to come back, really. Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth, they were supposed to come back for like a weird time travel Star Trek 4. Neither one of them wants anything to do with it. They're busy with their own projects. Obviously, Hemsworth is going into either Guardians 3 or Thor 4, whatever you want to call it, and Chris Pine is still doing, I believe, Wonder Woman 1984 and whatever else he has on the slate. He's a very busy actor these days. So in addition to that, you also have a bunch of the other actors that were in it that are kind of pulled in a bunch of different directions now. Obviously, Anton Yelnats unfortunately died. Really, the only one that I don't think has much going on is Zachary Quinto for as Spock. Simon Pegg is off doing most of his production stuff. Zoe Saldana, again, she's Gamora. She'll be in Guardians 3 and some other stuff, and I'm sure she has plenty of other roles that are on the slate. Um, Carl Urban usually has stuff going on, so it's it's going to be very difficult for them to try and get these people back together because they don't have them under. It's not like Disney where they sign them for like 5 or 6 movies. I think they were only signed for 3, and now they can't really get anybody back. So the series is essentially dead. The only other bright spot is kind of the Quentin Tarantino Star Trek, which apparently is still on the table. I guess he's writing the script for it now. I'm not sure, how that's going to shake out. Again, we have no information on that project other than the fact that Tarantino is attached to it. But this Picard thing is interesting because, like I said, there is some good. You were able to somehow convince Patrick Stewart to come back to the character, which he said that he would not do. So that's interesting in and of itself because you must have been able to appeal to something with him. And then you go back, and now we see, kind of who's doing the show. So the show is being written and produced by Alex Kurtzman. Alex Kurtzman is a hack. I will say that again. Alex Kurtzman is a fucking hack. He had most of his work. He has collaborated with Robert Orsi, who is another screenwriter who is limited in his talent, to say the least. But Kurtzman, generally, I mean, he's written some somewhat decent films. Excuse me. He's written some somewhat decent films. I mean, he wrote the first Transformers, which is okay. He wrote Mission Impossible 3, which is good. He wrote again, that was Mission Impossible 3 was co-written with J.J. Abrams and Robert Orsi. Again Robert Orsi with Transformers. But he also is responsible, and he also wrote Watchmen. But even that was basically it was an uncredited script polish. It wasn't necessarily him writing the whole thing out, but that was pretty much a copy and paste from the comic anyway. He also wrote the first Star Trek reboot film in 2009, which I don't mind. I think it's all right. Then he also has Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen and Cowboys stuff like Cowboys and Aliens. The big one that I'm going to discuss is Star Trek Into Darkness, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and just then recently The Mummy, which he also directed. So it's been a bumpy road for Kurtzman, and the thing is, I don't think he's that good of a writer. He has problems with story structure. And again, some of that might be credited to Robert Orsi. I could definitely see some of it credited to Robert Orsi. But I put a decent amount on Kurtzman, and there's a lot on his plate for this. So it's kind of it's kind of interesting that they would pick him because essentially, the franchise that he was on tanked. So I'm kind of surprised that they picked him to come into this. But he's probably one of their stable guys, I would assume, and that they just knew they could tap him and get him in. But so herein lies the problem: is Kurtzman is not good at writing, and Star Trek Into Darkness proves that. And when I say writing, I mean writing Star Trek. He also wrote Discovery too, which is that's another blemish. But Star Trek Into Darkness is one of the laziest written Star Trek films I have ever seen in my entire life, and some of it probably has to do with J.J. Abrams. Because J.J. Abrams likes to pull from other things instead of coming up with original ideas in many cases and redo other things. So it's kind of, you have two guys that are essentially hacks. You have a hack director and a hack writer, and you've seen the product that it puts out. Like I said, if you're a Star Trek fan and you've watched, especially if you're an original series fan and you've watched Into Darkness, you can tell where they're pulling everything from, and you can tell that they're doing it very poorly. And Kurtzman and Orsi even admitted during the writing process of that movie that they were not originally writing Benedict Cumberbatch's character to be Khan, but they just said, "Oh, he's so much like Khan. Let's just make him Khan." It's like, no, that's what a hack writer does. That's a prime example of it. Him basically putting his foot in his mouth. But that's concerning. That's extremely concerning to me, especially as a Star Trek fan. But there, there's going to be some interesting things with this going forward because, like I said, Kurtzman is, as far as I'm concerned, he created or he wrote the Last Jedi of Star Trek. So it's not good in that respect. But Patrick Stewart is also a really talented actor, and he's a fan favorite, and he's coming back to play a really pivotal character. So it could work itself out. The other thing is the title Star Trek Picard. Really, you're just going to title it Picard? You couldn't have come up with anything original like Star Trek, like years later, anything like Star Trek: The New Age or Star Trek, even like a generic title like that, like Star Trek: The New Age would have been better than Star Trek Picard. It's like, really? Like, I mean, I know he's the central character and he's who you're banking on, but you're just plastering his name all over it. Like, it feels odd because you're hinging everything on the series on him as opposed to showing, kind of what you have in store with the character as opposed to what you're doing, which is just essentially you're just parading, hey, look, we have Picard. Hey, look, we have Picard. Hey, look, we have Picard. And maybe the trailer will change that. Maybe the trailer will be good, and we'll be able to see a bit more of the story elements and some of the supporting cast and characters. But right now, this thing is looking very questionable to me. It's looking extremely questionable. And going forward, I think that, this is 50-50. This thing could go either way. This thing could go completely south. It could be a complete train wreck. It could be worse than Discovery. Or it could be the opposite, and it could be something that the fans will enjoy, and it's a nice little companion piece for the Picard character. And we get to see some great acting and from Patrick Stewart playing the character again. So there's a lot on the table here, but I want to know what you think. Are you excited for this? Are you a Star Trek fan? If you're not a fan, are you interested in this to like jump in? Put it in the comments. Anything you want, and remember to hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?